Hi everyone! I bet you have so many questions for me right now, don't you? And I will, of course, answer all of them within this video in due time. But can we first just appreciate how well this turned out? This tube looks amazing. The half pan? Not as well packaged, but still pretty cool, right? I'm aware the design isn't all that fancy, but I'm not a product designer, and to be honest, I like to keep things simple anyway. So, this was what I went with. From top to bottom, we have a little thing that tells you what product this is, Paint in Hiding Watercolors, followed by the channel logo, and then of course, the English name of the paint in the tube, V's Violet. For those of you who don't know, I'm V. Now, you might be wondering, what are these things under V's Violet? Well, let me explain a little something. Whilst I was working on this project, one of the important things to do was to decide what would go on the label. So I did a little bit of research. Here it is. Of course, everyone had their brands and logos on the front of their tubes, but I found it quite interesting that several brands also had the color names in French, Spanish, and/or German. Those were the most common languages. Of course, Holbein had Japanese and Shinhan had Korean on their tubes as well, respectively, of course. I decided to do something a little different. I looked up what were the top 3 most spoken languages in the world. Of course, English came up as number 1, followed by Mandarin Chinese, and then Hindi. Since I'm not fluent in either of the latter languages, I made sure to get some advice, so a big thank you to these people right here for helping me with translations. The last row of the languages is Thai, my native language. If there are any fluent Thai speakers watching, yeah, I know the translation isn't great, but I couldn't คือแบบจะให้แปลว่า V ของ Violet มันก็แปลกอยู่ไหม แล้วจะให้แปลยังไงชื่อของสีมันจะได้ฟังแล้วลื่นหูSo I just chose We Violet, which happens to also be a Thai singer. And then of course, last row here is the volume of the product inside. At the back here, we have the number 311. I've chosen that as the color code number because it's been a little over 3 years since I started this channel here on YouTube, and also at the time of recording this voiceover, I have a little over 3,000 subscribers, so I'm hoping to post this video when I hit 3.11k subscribers or close to it. And then granulating, semi-transparent, pigments, light fast rating 1, and a link to this YouTube channel. The half pan is pretty much the same thing with less information, mainly because I didn't plan on making the half pan in the first place. Now, before I can show you what V's Violet looks like, I need to tell you how this project began. It all started from reading this Jackson's blog post about mulling your own watercolor paints, using Jackson's dry pigment powders. I'll leave a link to the blog post below. Anyway, I got to the bottom and there's a link to this product on Jackson's. Empty tubes! I was so excited because I've been considering mulling my own paints for a while now, just to get in touch with my supplies more, you know. But as most of you might know, my circumstances don't make it ideal for mulling pigments on a glass slab for an extended period of time. If I have to suddenly put it away, it could get very messy. Lots of things to consider on my end, definitely, and I'm not too fond on having multiple pans of paint sitting there left to dry. Things could get very messy for a clumsy person like me. So these empty tubes were perfect for my project. And then this is where I seriously went into a deep dive about how to make my own binder, how to go about mulling my own paints as a newbie, things like that. But at the end of the day, there were too many components that I would have had to invest in, also considering that it might not even work out. I just wanted a tube of paint that I could call my own. So let me show you what I did and some things I learned along the way. Well, I'm sure from a quick glance you already know where I'm going with this already. From left to right, I have a tube wringer to get all the paint out, of course, some paint tubes, a little container, a small Ziploc bag, the empty tubes I mentioned earlier, scissors, and a metal ruler. Yes, I did not mull my own paints, but you know what? It's okay because it actually worked out better this way. Apart from the empty tubes from Jackson's, I didn't have to spend extra money on the supplies you see here. I went through my little box of student grade paints and these were the ones I chose to go with. Sennelier La Petite Rose Permanent PV19, Turquoise Green PB28, and Blue Violet PV15. We're going to mix these three colors in the Ziploc bag, so here I'm just prepping the Ziploc bag to be able to stand upright on its own by propping it up on the glass cup. And now the fun part begins. Squeeze all the paint into the bag. I used my handy dandy tube wringer to help with this step. I also got this from Jackson's for anyone wondering. I started with the Rose Permanent, then continued with Blue Violet, which essentially is just ultramarine violet. And last is the Turquoise Green. In Sennelier's artist grade range of colors, they use PG50 for this color, but in the La Petite student grade range, it's PB28. I can see some binder separation, but that's rather normal for colors made with cobalt pigments. Since I got my hands dirty, I did pause here for a bit to wash my hands and make sure my hands are clean before the next step, which is the mixing. Of course, gotta admire the paints for a bit before making sure there's not too much air still inside, and then this is where we close up the Ziploc bag and away we go with the mixing. I found that the most effective method was to use my fingers to massage the colors into one another, and once I got to a point where I felt like I couldn't mix any further, I'd use the metal ruler to scrape it all to the bottom of the bag to do another round of mixing and massaging. It only took about 2 to 3 minutes in total, after which I cut off one of the corners and poured the paint mixture into the prepared empty tube. Here's some paint pouring action for you. Doesn't that look wonderful? Kind of reminds me of those chocolate fountains, but maybe like a murky Willy Wonka style. Now here's the bit where I fumbled a bit with. As I was pouring the paint and trying to film everything, it occurred to me that I didn't really plan when to stop. It also didn't help that the paint was a dark color, so I couldn't see how much it was filling up until it was too late. I noticed there's this white tab around the inside of the tube, which I thought might have been a sign to like, don't fill your paints up past this line. But even then, I couldn't close it without the paint overflowing. So I used this thing to scoop out some of the paint a bit at a time into a half pan that was nearby. It turned out to be about a half pan, so yay for me, more paint! And by that point, I thought it was good to go. So if you're doing this by yourself, I'd recommend filling the tube up to about here in order to be able to seal the tube easily afterwards. After all that fumbling, I simply pinched the metal tube to close, and you can use your metal ruler for the sealing process as stated in the Jackson's article, or you can also do it like me, using the tube wringer to squeeze from the end towards the paint. From there, I literally just used my fingers to fold it up and we're done. As for the label, I did it all on a Word document application on my computer, then printed it on this sticker paper that I already have. Unfortunately, the paper isn't glossy or waterproof, so I decided to protect the label by using regular clear tape, to sort of give it a coating or lamination, if you will. Make sure to use a straight edge like a card or a ruler so there won't be any air bubbles. This first label I printed was too short, so I had to resize it and do it again, which then prompted me to make a quick label for the half pan as well. And then after some snippety snip snip action with the scissors, they're ready to be stuck on. Just do your best to keep it as level as can be. I did snip off a bit at the end there, but it wasn't necessary. It really depends on how you want your tube to look. As for the half pan, I still had some Roman small wrapper lying around, so I just haphazardly used one. And then I simply just stuck the label on, by wrapping it up around the whole thing. And there we have it! I'm so happy with how it turned out. Here is my paint tube alongside other well-known branded watercolor tubes. Not too shabby, eh? Now, let's swatch this out, shall we? Let's unwrap the half pan. Easy to re-wet, but I'd say it's more of a medium tinting color, probably because it's student's grade and not as pigmented as artist grade watercolors. And here we are. It swatches out sort of like a manganese violet, kind of, especially in the mass tone. And here I am opening the tube for the first time. I was actually prepared for it to splurt out everywhere because remember I used the tube wringer earlier? I guess I did just the right amount because it didn't splurt out. Anyway, I definitely squeezed out way too much paint here, but we're just gonna go with it. Swatching it out. Swish swash. And let's do some water sprinkles to encourage some color separation, watercolor magic happening. And while we wait for that to dry, I'm going to compare V's violet to some other more commonly known violets. Okay, so off to the left-hand side here, we have manganese violet, PV16, followed by ultramarine violet, PV15, ultramarine violet red shade, also PV15, and ultramarine pink, PR259. So far, V's violet looks like it has a bit of everything in it. Kind of, maybe? Then off to the right side there, we have my favorite. Then off to the right side there, we have my recent favorite violet mix, Da Vinci's Joyce's Mother Violet, followed by Daniel Smith's Rose of Ultramarine, and Daniel Smith Moonglow. I gotta admit, when I first swatched out V's violet from the pan, it did sort of remind me of Rose of Ultramarine, but from this quick swatch comparison, it looks like Rose of Ultramarine definitely has more red in it. Out of all these, I'd have to say the closest would be Joyce's Mother Violet, which I'm quite happy about as it's not exactly the same, but I feel like this could be my tube of like a dupe or student grade version of it. Although this hasn't dried completely, you can really see the color separation. I'm loving that it paints out like a purple, but dries with bits of pink and blue throughout. And now, one last admission I need to make. This isn't what I wanted V's violet to be. This is what I wanted it to be. That's why the printed label color isn't 100% accurate. So I tried out a lot of pigment combinations and really loved how this one turned out. But then when I was doing the filming and squeezing out the paints, I just got so caught up that I forgot to think about ratio until it was way too late. Yes, I should have done some test swatches, but I was too excited, okay? Everything just slipped my mind and I wish I could redo it, but you know, here we are. So please learn from my mistakes so you can make a better product than I did. Am I tempted to squeeze all this out, add some more PB28, and fill a new tube? Yes. Yes. But should I do it? Let me know in the comments down below. And before we go, just a little announcement for anyone that might not know already. I post videos every Sunday as premieres, so we're able to chat in the live chat bar on the side. If that's something you're interested in, then do feel free to pop by and say hi. Chat with me and the community. My fixed time is 11 p.m. Thailand time. Depending on how long my video is that I would post each week, I might move the premiere time to be 15 or 30 minutes earlier. And I always announce my premieres on Fridays, so you'll know a couple days in advance when the exact time would be. Alright, that's all I have for you today. As always, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to drink lots of water and stay hydrated.